Just a few reminders. We are, of course, having a live audience. It's really great to be able to be together. And I know that we have some folks who are joining us remotely. So today we have 3 speakers, and let me kind of set the context, if you will, for today's presentation. So as I think most of you, if not all of you know, we have a relatively new campus strategic plan that really emphasizes incorporating research activities into the curriculum, into all disciplines. And incorporating research into the curriculum would be one way to address integrating research within all disciplines and making it more accessible to more students. So Academic Affairs convened a series of different projects over the summer, and one of those projects is the current one that is being, discussed and presented here. And that is, this is a project that asks departments to examine how they are currently incorporating research activities into the curriculum, and perhaps importantly, use that as a foundation to take a look to see whether more or better such activities can be used to broaden access to undergraduate research. So we have 8 teams participated in this project over the summer, and today we have 3 teams with representatives here with us today. So I will be introducing our 3 speakers momentarily, but just so that our audience and our viewers know, we'd like to hold the questions until the end of the presentation. And for those who are joining us remotely, you can send your questions to us to ORSP email. The email address is orsp@uwec.edu. We will have people monitoring the inbox for such questions. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce our colleagues here. We have 3 today, as I mentioned. We have Dr. Abby Hemmerich from the Department of Communication Sciences and Disorders, and she is an associate professor and the chair of that department. We also have Dr. Thomas Kemp here, professor and department chair of the Department of Economics. Last but not least, we have Dr. Rahul Gomes, an assistant professor in the computer science department. So thank you to all of you, and I will hand over the mic.
All right, thank you. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm good. Audio good? Yes, okay. So I get to kick this thing off and talk a little bit about some exciting things that were happening in our department over the summer project that we did. Again, like Catherine mentioned, this was based on the summer research initiative that ORSP put on. So we appreciated that funding and initiative to get this going. I need to also acknowledge my collaborators, so Jerry Hepner and Katie Mueller, who were in the Department of Communication Sciences and Disorders, and then Katie Morley, who is in the library. So we had a collaboration across those groups. All right, so just to start out, it might be helpful to have a little bit of an overview of what the CSD program looks like. We are a pre-professional program, so we are training our students for careers in speech-language pathology and audiology, but both of those require a graduate degree. So our undergraduate students just need a really solid foundation. Our disciplines are considered both educational and healthcare, so we have kind of a wide array of topics that we need to cover. And because we're providing direct care to patients eventually, we need to draw upon principles of evidence-based practice, which is really founded in research, and how do we use what we know from research to provide good clinical services. So it's really, really critical for our students to learn how to read research and be good consumers of research very early on. The other piece for our field, it does include both basic science and applied research kinds of principles and projects, but within our individual department here on Eau Claire's campus, most of our work is clinical or applied based on the opportunities that we have available to us and the faculty interests that we have in our program. Our department has a pretty frequent undergrad research collaboration happening across all faculty with many, many students. But one of the things that we noticed as we started with this program in the this summer is we can't engage all students in one-on-one or small group research projects. And we know that this collaborative research is really, really important for their learning, but we also know that it really spreads into what they do clinically as well. So it would be great if we could offer that to more students and expose them earlier in their career so they can keep building on these skills over time. All right, so we did a little bit of curriculum mapping. This was part of the summer project. So not that you need to read all the teeny tiny print on there, but what I want to give you an overview of. We have a couple of courses very early in our major, an introductory course, for example, where students get just a really brief overview of how research applies to our field. As they get into their upper level courses junior year, they take, we call them disorder courses, where they're starting to see that evidence-based practice. How do you actually assess someone with a communication disorder? How do you treat them? What are you actually going to do in clinical practice? And then as seniors, they have this chance to do that hands-on in our clinic on campus. So they work one-on-one or in small groups with someone who has a communication disorder. So you might notice as I introduce that, there's kind of a gap in the sophomore year. And we've tried to fill that gap with the two courses that I'm going to talk a little bit more about today. Our undergraduate research course in our department, and then another course that we created and we're sort of assessing as part of this project. All right, so these are the two courses that I'm going to talk about. We created this course bundle in the fall of 2021. So much of what I'm going to share with you today is kind of preliminary in terms of data because it just ended. But here's what we had. So in our department, this undergraduate research course is a required course for sophomores. And I'll talk a little bit more about what it looks like in a second. And we paired that, required our students to take an IDIS course this past fall taught by a library faculty member, so not someone in our department. Okay, so just a little bit about the two courses. Our CSD 235 is the undergraduate research course. It's sort of a seminar style course, even though it's a sophomore level course. It's project based, so students are creating and completing a research project using, I just snipped some little views here. They use clinical videos from our clinic. So we have a recording system. We can record those sessions. They can watch 8 to 10 to 15 sessions and actually take data from real clients that they're looking at. They usually do a single subject design so that they can really focus in and learn about one disorder in depth, and then come up with some conclusions at the end, which may or may not be related to what that client was actually there for. So it can be really a unique project and doesn't necessarily have to follow a certain pathway. They also get course content related to all kinds of research principles. So exposure to research design, things about ethics, all of the things that you might imagine that fit into an undergraduate research course. I'm trying to keep an eye on the clock too, so help me out, Catherine, if I'm getting behind. All right, the IDIS course taught by Katie Morley from the library is really a focus on information literacy. So I put up her learning objectives here so you can kind of see those. But what she did was, I thought, pretty unique and pretty awesome for our students to experience. She took the content and the project that they were doing in our undergraduate research course and then had them go through all kinds of activities to help them deepen their understanding, help them develop new skills, especially in things like literature searching, understanding what they're reading, validating what they're reading, knowing if it's something that's authentic and usable or if it was something that was maybe not a reliable source. So it was really valuable to help our students develop those deeper skills and really get a second chance at seeing some of those things that we couldn't incorporate enough in our own course. All right. So here's my slide where I say you don't have to try to read any of this. One of the things that we were asked to do this summer was to see how do the student research outcomes from the URSP list, if you see that list posted, how do those match up with what we're doing? And what we could see as we looked at the two courses that we were offering, we're really able to hit all of those outcomes. And remember, this is sophomore level, so they're going to have multiple opportunities down the road to hit those topics again. All right, so just some brief preliminary kinds of findings. We did course evaluation surveys. That's about the level of data that we have at this point. Hopefully we'll have additional data down the road. Students in our undergraduate research course really felt like they learned about research. They had some pretty good confidence in their skills, but they also acknowledged that it's really hard to do a hands-on project. So they need the support, and really when we looked at the course evals for the IDIS course, the support from that really helped them be more successful in the project that they were doing. So those two courses overlapped enough that the students could see the connections, which is a positive thing. Students don't always connect across courses. So it was obvious enough to them, and they were actually able to use some of those information literacy skills very acutely as they were doing their project. All right, so just to kind of sum things up, where are we going next? This project, the course is being offered again, the IDIS course, with plans to make it more of a permanent fixture. This was a pilot run, but it seems like something that we want to continue to do. So we're working on that, doing a new course proposal. And then the other thing that we're thinking about in our department is really how do we measure outcomes more long-term. So student evaluations are great for getting kind of a quick snapshot of what they think they learned, but how do we track that over the whole curriculum now? Can we see what those sophomores do now at the senior level? So we're starting to think more about that. Don't have an answer for that yet, but that's where we're headed in CSD. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Tom. Ooh, there you go.
I'm going to keep my comments to 10 minutes. So. Okay, so the format of this, so I'm Tom Kemp, as mentioned, Department of Economics. I worked with a few of my colleagues on this project this last summer, Dr. Yan Lee and Mr. Colin Hawkins. And the title here is a little different because this is actually part of a wider project that is kind of a personal interest of mine, and I'm going to double dip on this presentation and do it for another area. So what I'll talk about in this is a little bit of the landscape of economic education, the rationale for more empirical and applied economics education, some examples of a scaffolded educational experience within the context of what we've done this year, and then some thoughts on future work and directions. So when we think about economics, usually it's subdivided into micro and macroeconomics. Now, microeconomics in general really owes its heritage to this textbook by Alfred Marshall, which was the dominant economics textbook from 1890 when it was first published through the 1930s. So most of the things that we think of consisting in a normal microeconomic course are derived from this book. So you pick up any modern microeconomics textbook, it really owes its lineage to Marshall. Within those textbooks, we pick up any microeconomics textbook, we see simple supply and demand graphs, much to the horror of many of my audience, I'm sure. And we're probably having traumatic experiences at this moment, as well as sort of the conventional cost curve structures of the firm. Now, in both of these, as well as in the slide we'll see in a moment about macroeconomics, these are hypothesized relationships between a variety of economic variables. Okay. I went backwards there rather than forwards. Similarly, macroeconomics owes its lineage to Paul Samuelson's 1946 text, which was the dominant macroeconomics textbook and indeed economics textbook well into the 1970s. And frankly, every macroeconomic, or nearly every macro textbook on the market today, again, owes its lineage to Samuelson's Foundations of Economic Analysis. Within that, we see standard Keynesian macroeconomics, which is really all macroeconomics, such subcategories as circular flow diagram, general market equilibrium now, rather than specific or partial market equilibrium, business cycle theory, and some more advanced models, such as IS and LM and ASAD models. Again, we see sort of hypothesized relationship between a variety of, in this case, macroeconomic variables. Here we see the essence of an IS-LM model and the derivation of general equilibrium across labor markets, general economic growth, and specific financial and goods markets. And then here we see a ASAD model, simplified again, a series of hypothesized functional relationships between a large number of variables. So similar to microeconomics. Now, a little bit of background here. The reason why I'm going into this is to show you where we are in terms of economic education, why we're there, perhaps where we need to go, and why that gulf exists. Okay, so that's sort of the platform here. We do this in economics because we believe there's a value to this approach. First, it formalization and summarizes, provides clarity of concept. So we're able to convey functional relationships between most central macro and microeconomic variables in a relatively concise manner, and give the student a set of heuristics which have widespread application. So everything from understanding why the price of gasoline likely goes up when there are various supply chain issues, right, to understanding why the Fed is likely to react to inflation with increased interest rates. Okay, all simple heuristics that can be developed from these hypothesized functional relationships. Okay, how are we doing on time? Excellent. Okay. This is also an excellent way to think about problems in an environment where we have poor data or high computational costs, which is, most of our day-to-day existence, right? At the first year level, most of our students are not economics students. They are LE students, and so they do not go on to necessarily be economists. So it's primarily a liberal arts objective in this case. And so these heuristics are realistically probably what's going to be most useful in their lives, because they're not going to be practicing economists, okay? So there's good reason why we do this. These models also work really pretty well where we have well-established institutions that are not in flux. So if we have an institutional environment that's relatively stable, the models perform pretty well and give the students really a very good set of heuristics about how to view the economy and to arrive at sort of straightforward conclusions. Okay, I've just defined here institutions because that's maybe something that's not clear or differs from subfield to subfield. Of course, times are changing though, right? This was my first computer. So I have some fond memories of those old disk drives and the Apple IIe. But we're moving from data poor to data rich environments, right? So, we think even 20, 30 years ago, these were relatively data poor environments, right? As an undergraduate in the early 1990s, I pulled the books off the shelf, right? And I copied the GDP data from hand into Excel cell by cell. But that's no longer, right? Now, a student who even has just a casual interest in economics can pull up GDP data from, well, most easily from the Fred website operated by the St. Louis Fed. Okay. Similarly, we can pull these up in class in just a matter of seconds. Okay, I mean, it's just a few clicks away, right? We can be doing relatively sophisticated analysis. So we're moving from a data poor to a data rich environment. There's, of course, also falling computational costs. And we live in a world where there's increasing recognition of institutional diversity and institutional flexibility. So in other words, some of the very important strengths of the educational model in economics, they're not maybe as strong as they once were, or at least they are lacking in this regard. So the question then becomes, how do we, build these research experiences into economics? Okay. Economics as an educational field, not as a practicing field. As a practicing field is largely an empirical science using mostly quantitative methods, but also a fair amount of qualitative methods as well. But pedagogically, economics is a set of heuristics. Okay, so that's how to think about research or start to think about how to ask research questions. But it's a long way from actually doing research. So that there is the gulf that needs to be bridged, both pedagogically and also mechanically in terms of getting students to be able to do this type of work. Okay, so a little bit of summary of that here. We also want students to sort of understand how sort of economics fits in this spectrum of both social and hard sciences. That is to say, we sort of reside somewhere between humanities and other social sciences, and then maybe more harder information sciences, because of course as a field we employ methods from most of these areas, if not all of them, depending upon the subfields that you're operating in. Okay. So what we did with this project last summer is we first went back to our student learning outcomes for all our courses. So all of the econ courses have already been mapped to a set of student learning outcomes across the catalog. And what we attempted to do is identify areas where the ERSCA outcomes appeared to align relatively well with existing student learning outcomes. In other words, we didn't try to reinvent the wheel with this. We tried to figure out where the lowest cost insertions are into the curriculum to provide a introductory experience to research methods, both empirical and applied, qualitative and quantitative. Okay? And we wanted to do this in a scaffolded way whereby this didn't simply appear in certain specialized courses, which has been the history within economics. So research methods generally occurs within econometrics, research methods or other applied courses that we have offered, but not spread across the general economics curriculum. So what we started to think about, and this was actually another project we work on, is to begin our students with understanding basic coding and data management skills, even before they come into these classes, trying to build that into the curriculum for economics. So by the time they get into economics, They understand basic data management skills. In the first year courses, we're going to be trying, well, we have in some courses, but not in all courses, right? So I'll talk a little bit more about some of the details of that in a moment, but we want to introduce them to quantitative and qualitative methods in economics. We want to teach them to locate appropriate economic data and the importance of institutional context. So they understand that a given set of institutional assumptions for the United States does not necessarily apply even for a country as close as Mexico, which globally speaking is institutionally fairly close to the United States. Whereas in the more advanced classes, we want to scaffold upon this relationship of understanding data, how to get data, how to manage data in a rudimentary manner, and then start to apply it to econometric methods, not only in the standalone course, but across the upper division courses, research design and methods, to apply field work where possible and appropriate, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in seconds, and also to advance incorporation of independent research projects into the curriculum. Economics is, well, we do a lot of faculty-student collaborative research, okay? That's something that we find to be quite valuable and we wish to expand upon. Okay, so again, here's some details, right, of the kind of stuff that we would be doing, we are doing in some courses, and we will hope to advance to all courses in the near future. I'll spend too much time on that. Some examples of projects that we've already done. These all just happen to be mine, but because that's what I had time for when I was putting this together last week. But this one, I actually took a group of students down to Buffalo County, and we did this work in conjunction with the county board down there on rural economic development. And we offered them a bunch of rural economic development strategies. This actually is one of the ferries, the paddleboat wheelers, and one of my recommendations was that they put in a terminal for the pass, right? And they kind of laughed at me at the time, but this was 4 years ago now. Today they have one, right? So this was work we did up for Vilas and Oneida County and the tribal nations up there on the value of water clarity. This was a team of students, right? And this was some work we did just last year for the Thompson Center to see, what degree Wisconsin manufacturing could be shifted into green technologies. So these are all work that was done with students, taking them out in the field, getting them to meet with community members, reporting out, so on and so forth. Okay. All right. Now here's the challenge, and I've got 1 minute. The challenge is we don't know if this is improvement, right? I mean, students say they like it, right, and everything, but we don't know for a fact, right? What is the appropriate metric to measure outcomes? Is it GDP, time to graduation, work placement rate, work satisfaction, student satisfaction? I'm not sure, okay? And I'm interested to know from other people. And then finally, how does one standardize a curriculum that is by its nature idiosyncratic? So those are the questions I have right now. I'm actually hoping to build some partners in other departments at our schools so we can kind of build some kind of, so we can do some analysis here. Okay, I don't want to take up anybody else's time, so I'm going to call it there, and that's all here. Oh, forgot I even had it on.
Thank you. Are the audience watching slide or slide from the slide? All right. Let's see. Okay. Everybody can hear me? Okay, good. All right. So here is the work that we did from computer science. I like putting faces in the slides just so that people know who we are. This is my colleague Rakib Islam, and that's me over there on the right. And we tried to do a similar work as my colleagues here did in their department. And then we also did not try to reinvent the wheel. So let's see what we already have and combine research with that, with our curriculum. So a little bit of history on our department. We have comprehensive major with 2 tracks. Software engineering is our normal major, and computer science is a comprehensive major. We have minors as well. And students are engaged in several research activities with CS faculty. And there are also student groups, organizations who are encouraging research through some activities throughout the year. For example, one of them is SACM, that's Student Association of Computing and Machinery. Another is OMTech, which stands for Organization of Minorities in Technology. So they do promote a lot of research activities in the department. It's a very new department, if everybody across the campus has some idea about that. So these are our 6 new faculty members, and you'll see that both of us are on the right-hand side. The reason why I put this up is that you get to know who we are, and second of all, the department is very comprehensive in terms of research diversity. Each of us have our own niche, and we get along pretty well with collaborating so that we check all these boxes in terms of student interest in research. So the CS curriculum in the past, it has been very rigorous, and it's always a little bit rigorous, with 39 credits for the computer science core, 15 credits from the math core, and 6 credits from CS electives. What this means is that those 39 credits are really rigorous in terms of the content that is being covered. So that is why there was less focus on research. But with the new faculty and the new changes that are happening, we are making an effort to incorporate research in some way or the other. There are 8 student learning outcomes in computer science major, and they are like all of the departments. For example, we have the first one says that we want to apply foundational elements of mathematics logic for problem solving and designing algorithms. The second one talks about analyzing a problem and defining the computing requirements. I mean, do I need a high-performance supercomputer or do I need a normal laptop to do a particular job? Then we have how do we design a program? And then how do we use the computer architecture and operating systems to get something worked out? So if you notice the trend, I mean, these are the 4, and there are these 4. The first 4 have a lot of computing terms on them. So they're pretty specific with what we are trying to achieve. And then we come to these ideas. If you take a look at evaluating a wide variety of modern tools, collaboration, then recognize social, ethical, and legal issues, and then communicate. This is where we sort of are putting in research goals. Some things which we were able to align with URSCA's activities. So these were the URSCA student learning outcomes that were given to us. We have autonomy, self-awareness, resilience, and communication, with a lot of several outcomes which Abby showed us in the first slide. We tried to see which ones could fit into these 4, and the ones which we were having a difficult time fitting in, we were able to design our own department-specific URSCA 5. So that is what we did over the summer. And we tried to put in the student learning outcomes that also aligns with those URSCA outcomes. So here's a chart which we tried to pull together, showing how they were aligned. For example, if you look at the student learning outcome 1, which says apply knowledge, and we found it to be similar to URSCA 5 because it was more specific to computing knowledge. However, if you look at student learning outcome 2, which says analyze a problem and find trade-offs, we were able to align it with URSCA 1 and 3, which talks about autonomy and resilience, because you're trying to analyze a problem and find solutions to solve that problem in a better way. And if you look at, say, suppose SLO, student learning outcome 6, which is collaboration, we were able to align that with URSCA 2, which has self-awareness. Also, we have a student learning outcome 8, which directly talks about communication, and we have URSCA 4, which is talking about communication. So there is a lot of similarity which we were able to identify through our work. So now about courses. How does URSCA student learning outcomes fit in with the courses? For this research, we only looked at courses which were kind of considered as core courses for our major, not something like 491, which is in itself a research course to begin with. So CS 485, for example, is software engineering 2, and that is considered a capstone level project. But here we found out URSCA 1 fits very nicely with the I would say objectives. So we have students enjoying full autonomy and play the main roles in implementing the capstone project. So we have groups of students who are collaborating and they are designing a software for a particular client. So they are coming up with their own ideas, and they're doing it without direct instructor supervision. And then we have ORSCA 2, where we have class projects for, say, suppose web systems, which is CS 268, and CS 355, that is software engineering 1. Here we have things like collaboration. So we have students are collaborating together in a team to develop a web-based project. And then we have something like students are distributing their project-related tasks based on their knowledge and strength. So we have students who are deciding, okay, this is the part that I want to do, and this is the part, because I know what it is. So that kind of a distribution goes on between them, and then they present, it's kind of like a pre-presentation as to who is going to do what portion of the project, so that I can give a second opinion as to whether it's a good idea or not. Like this, we have ORSCA 3 examples. So ORSCA 3 has software engineering 1, where we look at project requirements. So we want to satisfy the project requirements so students show perseverance to overcome any challenges and flexibility and accommodate change requests. So usually with software engineering projects, when we reach out to clients, the client with a demo software, they have changes that they want us to make, and we want to make sure that the changes are good. And then ORSCA 4 looks at 268, 355, and 485, because these courses are trying to satisfy the client's requirement by communication. And then students are presenting the project in front of the class. Students are documenting what they have found out, because in software engineering, documentation is very important to explain to the people or the clients what the software is all about. So the idea what we are trying to get at is, we had these discussions with our department colleagues, and the department colleagues were very much with us, or they agreed that this is what they are doing, and they have a mindset of doing it to give the students a research experience along with their curriculum requirements. So there is a paradigm shift where we are trying to incorporate a lot of research experience, so that instead of just teaching them from the book. And then these are the ORSCA 5. So there were some things which we couldn't fit into the ORSCA 4 outcomes, so we tried to match them with our ORSCA 5 outcomes. So how does this all play out? I mean, these are just some statistics that we have through these courses. So these are 145 all the way till 485, the core courses. And we are actually able to reach out to a lot of students throughout the semesters and positively impact them to do research. And the question comes as, sometimes what happens is with courses like 485, which is software engineering, and courses like 268, which is web systems, students try to pick out a project and work on it based on their choice, what they like. Say, suppose somebody might like artificial intelligence more than robotics, right? So they pick up a topic, and how do they pick up a topic? We don't tell them, but we try to make them know that there are different aspects of computer science through CS 146, that is a big picture in computer science. So that is a freshman level course where we actually tell them that these are the things you can do, and these are the things you can research upon. So they are kind of already aware as to which level they want to take when they are trying to start their research. So the examples, I mean, this chart actually shows you what we have right now, but this is not the end. This was a completely pilot project where we took it up as a challenge, and we are trying more to include research in one way or the other. So more changes will happen, and I'm hoping that most of the ORSCA 5 outcomes in some way or the other will start fitting in with the ORSCA, all the 4 outcomes that ORSCA has for us. So that is all I have. Thank you.
the three speakers. Do we have any questions for any of the speakers? From either our audience who are with us here or those who are joining us virtually?
I have a question for Abby in particular. So thinking about future directions and kind of how you were going to inform the work that you're doing in your classes, have you in the past, or do you have plans to reach out to graduates to see how prepared they were for their graduate work, and how might you use that?
Yeah, so that's certainly on the table for a way that we maybe would look at outcomes. I'd have to think about how we ask them coming in. The trick is that we get lots of students who apply to our graduate program, only 18 who get in. So then how do I get a sample that's what I really want to see? We have thought about, in terms of more long-term outcomes, getting into graduate school might be one way to kind of think about that and what kind of impact their understanding of research has on that. I still think that's kind of a squishy way to measure that because there's lots of factors that go into getting into graduate programs. And whether there's maybe something even longer term, one thing we've thought about too is how many students consider a research career or a PhD in our field. And we have a huge shortage, so I think if we could push some more students that direction, that might be another measure for us to start to think about. But that graduate program piece is an interesting one. I don't have a good answer for it yet.
Thank you.
Yeah. Others?
More questions for our speakers? Yeah. Spread it this way so that our remote audience can hear.
So my question is, how are you integrating things like work study into basically giving students a way to pursue research? Yeah.
Just a clarification, is the question on utilizing work-study funds to help support research activities, or?
Yeah, is that already existing in these departments, or is it a tool that you're using, I guess?
I'll just say quickly, in case my colleagues want to talk about that. So in the Department of Economics, we fund this through a variety of methods. Some is funded through work study. Some of it is funded through a Blue Gold commitment grant that we have that's reoccurring, and another significant portion of it is funded through external grants and external groups. Just like, for example, the water study that we did, those counties wanted that work done, so they paid us to do it. Right, and that funded student research. So,
Thank you.
Any more questions?
So these are sort of pilot projects and partial groups in the department working on this. What's your sense of how it will be embraced by your entire department?
I don't want to be that guy, right? God, Kemp's talking again. So when we met as a department, right? So when we did the mapping and all that stuff, the three of us met, right? But then we brought that all to the department, and proposed it like as. I mean, we don't have ordinances, obviously, in the department, right? But sorry, I've spent most of my morning over at City Hall. But we sort of have policy objectives, right? As a department, we want to do this, and the department is completely on board with this. Now, folks differ in their willingness to alter their courses at this juncture, but I think there's a general agreement that going forward, we want to move in that direction. Yeah.
I would say the same thing is true in our department. So even though a small group sort of worked on this, everybody's pretty excited about this course pairing that we've created and the fact that we've made it interdisciplinary and it's not just in our department. So certainly more work to do and more integration that we can do. But I think there's also a lot happening that faculty maybe didn't even realize they were doing related to research. So part of it is just how you frame that in the discussion too. Look at what you're already doing. Could you do one more thing, right? So that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I'm on the same board as well with Abby and Tom that we are also doing the same thing. I mean, we at least, we had a conversation as a department in general that how can we include research in the curriculum. And the new faculty members are already exploring research objectives through different groups. For example, AIMS group is one of them. And then we also have a good amount of work being done on the high performance supercomputing cluster along with the Mayo collaboration. So since we have this framework already in place and it's moving with students doing so much research, it would be, everybody was on board with the fact that it would be a nice idea to have some amount of this research and discussion in the curriculum itself. So projects is a very good way to make that happen. I mean, it's nice to see students talking amongst themselves, collaborating in a way to give feedback and also assessing themselves as to, okay, this is how I should be doing without faculty supervision is a very nice thing. I mean, they develop a lot of interpersonal skills. So that's what motivates us as faculty members to have research in the curriculum. So, yeah.
So thank you, everybody. Of course, the three speakers and all of you in joining us. So join us again next week. We'll be back in the same space, same time. So thank you.